Back in November 2021, the Flight Training Australia podcast was born. 2 years later, and into our 100th episode, today we're going to celebrate by talking to a bunch of fantastic aviators all across Australia sharing their journey. All that and more coming right up. So strap in and let's get into it.
Standby star 9000, 1013, Kilo 25. Coordinating aileron, I'm on a bank, balance, bank pressure rolling at 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees there.
Hello and welcome to the 100th episode of the Flight Training Australia podcast. The podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. G'day, I'm your host Trent Robinson. Thank you again for joining me. Whether this is your first time or you've been here for the last few episodes or all previous 99, thank you for listening in. Thank you for sharing it with your friends. And most of all, thank you for sharing your love and passion of aviation with me and sending me all your messages, saying g'day at the airports. And it's just a fantastic time in aviation at the moment, I think, for Australia. There's a lot going on and there's a lot of need for something like this, and you guys all make it possible, keeping me going and motivated to keep the episodes pumping out each week. So all I can say is thank you. And of course, thank you to my amazing patrons, those that financially support me with the episodes now. There's 30 of you. You're all absolute legends. I know you've all got your coffee cups, your stickers, and those that don't, just making a financial contribution that just goes together towards the production of this and other projects that I do. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you'd like to jump on and join me, the Patreon website is attached to the episode description here, patreon.com/Flight Training Australia. It's 100% tax deductible. You can join in part or as a whole, varying levels of memberships, and I would dearly love to have you on board. I've got heaps planned for the next year. This is essentially the second anniversary of the podcast, which is just fantastic. And I have recorded a bunch of videos that will be starting to show up on Patreon and YouTube in the coming weeks. So stay tuned. That is a promise. They will be there. In the meantime, let's not delay. This episode is nearly 2 hours long, so I have split it. That is my 100th episode gift to you. There's going to be episodes 100 and 101 released on the same day. You may remember in episode 69, I had the fortune of talking to 6 amazing aviators all about their careers, and 2 of them are back to join me today. I've got Austin in Perth and Chloe in Broome. Also in Perth, we have Hubert and Jared, and up here in the Territory, we have Andrew and Carrie. So thank you, everyone, for joining me. And Andrew, let's start with you, mate. You really inspire me with what you're doing, and I think, you know, a lot of people have actually contacted me and asked me about the very similar situation to what you're doing. So do you want to just firstly talk about your training experience and what it is that you're sort of putting yourself through right now coming up here to Darwin?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I don't know if the thing you sort of touched on is the fact that I've started out a little bit later. I always wanted to be a pilot when I was younger, but I guess I didn't have the financial way to make it work, and probably didn't believe in myself either. So I went off and started a career in customer service. I worked for one of Australia's leading telcos, and had a pretty good career actually doing that. Got to travel all over the world, and probably could have kept doing it, but it was finding, I guess, I was enjoying it less. As I guess I got more senior, it became more about cost and less about serving customers. And there was an opportunity for me to take a package. I did that, and then I rolled the dice to actually chase my dream to become an aviator. So back in 2019, I started down in Melbourne. I went back to school, at RMIT with a whole, I guess there was 88 of us starting off, and embarked on a 2-year course. Fortunately or unfortunately, I guess, COVID happened, and that sort of threw a bit of a spanner in the works. But got through that in the end. I guess, with COVID, it was a little bit I wasn't exactly sure when was the right time to sort of, I like the analogy of letting go of a trapeze and sort of, taking that leap of faith. But yeah, packed up the car, and this year came up to Darwin to try and, I guess, secure that first job. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's me for the moment.
And I think the first of all the decision to come to Darwin, but let everybody know what you've left behind, which is so difficult about what you're pursuing.
Yeah, look, I guess I'm very, very lucky and fortunate that I've got a very supportive family back at home. So my wife and kids, got a 16 and about to turn 14-year-old at home, and so I'm very fortunate in the fact that I've got a supportive family that are enabling me to be quite remote for them or from them for some time, while I chase this passion and chase this. I guess it's a tough part in the aviation journey. That first few hundred hours, it can be quite difficult unless you're lucky to sort of stumble into your first job or whatnot. But essentially, I've come up here to try and chase the work. Again, having listened to your podcast. Was amazing, particularly through COVID, where it was so difficult at times. We were locked in our homes for the better part of a year or two. Literally couldn't leave home for more than an hour or whatnot. So, no ability to even get to school to progress with our training and stuff like that, let alone, even just get out and do normal things. But to have your podcast through that time was incredible, to, I guess, maintain that level of motivation and interest and whatnot. And so through and I guess, your colleagues that you meet and stuff, many of them had gone to different parts of Australia. Some were up there with Broome. So Sam, I guess that was on the last, or episode 69. I know, a couple of guys that were up there in Broome flying with her. And, I guess I took a lot of information from your podcast. And to me, weighing it all up, Darwin seemed like a great opportunity, with obviously so many different varied types of roles that might be available, but also, that ability for me, if I need to, jump on a plane and get back to Melbourne, in one flight.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Look, I think it's an absolute credit for you to back yourself, and again, just so special what your family's doing to support you, because I can't even imagine being away from mine. I just got back from 10 days, and that was long enough. So it's a huge thing that you're doing. So part of that decision making is obviously to come up to Darwin, but you chose to do an instrument rating. Was an instructor rating maybe on the cards that could potentially have allowed you to stay in Melbourne, or did you find that because of COVID, the area was saturated with unemployed instructors, and so you sort of took that Darwin path instead?
Yeah, look, the instrument rating or the instructor rating were the ways that you could choose to finish the course at RMIT, and I certainly sort of weighed it up and considered whether or not the instructor rating might have been a good thing to do. And I guess I consider that it may still be a good thing to do. But I guess when I looked at it and thought about my personal preferences as to what I want to do I want to sort of teach the next generation, or do I want to get out and actually move that box or that person or that payload from A to B? For me, it was very much, that's what my passion is. And I think, there are some incredible instructors out there, and sort of kudos to those instructors. But for me, I wondered whether or not, if my true passion is more about actually just going out and flying the line versus teaching the next person, whether or not, being true to myself and the student that is paying so much to be there, whether or not, I guess it was right for me to try and chase that. So people have sort of said to me, I might be a good instructor, and who knows, maybe down in the path or in the future, that might be sort of what I end up doing. But I, again, also considered that if I were to do that, look, I wanted to have, maybe 500 hours or 1,000 hours of experience. I wanted to be able to tell real life stories about, this is where I've been, or these are some of the things that I've done, versus, perhaps just having done my training, in the circuit and a few navs, and then basically you're sort of teaching the next generation, whereas you actually don't have, I guess, the authenticity to really be able to draw upon real life experience that you've had in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. So how's the job hunt been going, and what sort of work have you managed to find so far?
So again, I guess I was kind of lucky in that, right place, right time. I was able to get a casual job initially. So I have been flying for a company called RDO Equipment. They've got a little retractable 182 parked up here at Darwin International, and I fly their people, either their salespeople or their service people, around the Northern Territory and Western Australia. So that's been fantastic. It's been instrument flying as well. So I didn't necessarily expect to get that, and that was a little bit daunting initially, but it's also, it's a real privilege, and you feel very looked after, I guess, by air traffic control and whatnot when you're really being handed off from one person to the next, and into approach, and I guess prioritised a bit also versus not necessarily having to hold or that sort of thing a bit more that you might be doing if you're VFR. Yeah, it has been casual.
Yeah, well, you've been quite unique there, haven't you? That we always tell people don't expect to go IFR your first job, and you've literally done it.
Yeah, that's right. So, ticking off some IFR hours and some night hours and that sort of thing, which has been, really, really terrific. But it's probably for me, I guess, we're just wanting to get as much work as possible. I recently got a second job at the moment, flying for an electrical company up here. They've got a 206 and 210, so I'll be flying again some of their people around, and some planned work, but also some emergency stuff. And I suppose through the wet season, also getting people out to places which might be a bit more cut off through the wet season to get things back up and running. But at the moment, I haven't been able to secure the full-time gig, so I'm doing what I'm sure many others are doing, and that's going around and obviously doing the resume drops and that sort of thing. And I hope that at some point, I'll be fortunate enough to get it a full-time job. I really look forward to the opportunity, I guess, just to really be doing that, every other day, and the experience and the benefit, I guess, of just doing it every day. How that'll sort of get you real sort of, match fit, if you like. Whereas at the moment, it's sort of here, there, and everywhere, and sometimes if you're not flying, I guess, all the time, you can start to get a little bit rusty. So.
Yeah, look, it's definitely part of the challenge, isn't it, mate? So Austin, I know you similar to when we last spoke. You were working, or you just done your training and things, and then you were looking at getting a job down south. How did all that go?
So I was originally an instructor. Just for the people that probably haven't heard before, but I was an instructor based out of Brisbane, and I've been at Aerometrics for around 9 months now. Definitely just stuck in Perth, or they're Perth-based, but I've been loving it ever since. It's a great gig. I just got a great promotion just to become one of their line trainers and check-in training. So utilising my instructor rating now on the Part Navia it's been really good, actually. It's fantastic. I always loved teaching. I've always loved instructing, and to begin having been able to give the opportunity to do it in this job is absolutely fantastic. But I just had a look beforehand. I think I just reached my 50th aerodrome that I've flown to. So I've been to nearly every state in Australia. So that's also great to do. And I can't recommend it enough for people that just want to travel and want to meet people. But also it is last minute notice from what I've found. So you'll get the call on the last day of your off period, and you've got to go out to your shift. If that's something that interests you, do it. Absolutely. It's fantastic. And you meet so many people when you're out working, and it's all multi-engine IFR. So the learning curve of going VFR as a grade 3 ab initio training into a IFR scenario, just like Andy said, going through different centers of controllers, approaches and whatnot, it's a absolutely huge learning curve. And I'm so grateful, absolutely so grateful for it. And it's great. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. So with the Part 119, which will eventually come out, April is the rumored time frame. But I've been spending a lot of time doing upskilling of charter pilots, essentially giving them instructor training, training endorsements and approvals and things, helping get these check and training things set up. So how did that work for you? And did you have to do any other training endorsements to apply to the work that you're doing now?
No, so no Part 119, no physical check and training. I'm basically just a line coder for the survey. So I don't do any of the general handling. I don't do the multi-engine. essentially what I'll do is it's just in-house training that I did through the company. When we get the new guys coming through, they'll do their, I think it's the Part 61 385. I'm not sure exactly. You'll have to get Joe to check that out. But they'll do that sort of general handling training, get passed on to myself. I'll go through the survey, just go through a bit of the IFAR, en route, anything that helps out really, sign them off, and they're checked to line from there.
Yeah, well, that's right. So as a line training pilot, you're not manipulating controls. You potentially got passengers on board. You're not doing emergency procedures. So you're more of the subject matter expert, familiar with the routes and the kind of flying you're doing, and checking everyone's following SOPs. Yeah.
Absolutely. It is quite cruisy. Everyone seems to be very switched on, especially nowadays, and the guys that we've hired. So it's been very rewarding, but also very, I shouldn't say easy, but it's definitely worked out quite well with the guys that have started out with us.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. And Chloe, so last we spoke to you, you had just started your very first job in GA, finishing a school teacher to, what was it, a 210 driver.
Yeah.
So how did all that go?
Yeah.
And what was it like with the transition once you got going?
Do you know what? I never missed teaching. I never thought I never looked back at the classroom. I miss parts of it, but I have never looked back and gone, oh, I'm not teaching anymore. I'm not doing my usual job. I wake up every morning and I don't go to work essentially. It doesn't click that, oh, it's like a mundane job and you're grinding out, just hours. Every day is just exciting and different. I couldn't be happier just changing careers. Honestly, so much happier.
Yeah. Well, there's someone else in this room who I know his favourite little quote is love what you do. He says it all the time. And that's the thing, isn't it? If we're so lucky to do what we do, and even though it can seem a bit crap at times and a tough grind, we do it because of the passion, don't we?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So eventually, you got going, and then next I spoke to you, you were in a different part of the world.
Yeah.
So you moved across the Broome.
Yeah.
So just take us through the pros and cons, and sort of what helped lead to that decision to make that move sort of so early on.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to let my first employer down. I mean, I'm very grateful to get my first start, hit maybe 700 hours with them. So I was incredibly grateful for that. And I was out in Arnhem Land for a bit, based in Darwin as well. And then I suppose a lot of people in their 20s get to travel Australia, are living out of, a full drive, and can just go from town to town. But being a pilot, trying to establish a career, that's a lot more difficult. So I the opportunity to fly in Broome and see the Kimberley and do scenics, which is something I think I've always wanted to do. So that opportunity came up and I just couldn't say no to it. So came across to Broome and it's been an amazing move.
No, that's fantastic. It's great to have that. And again, it's a tough decision, isn't it? Have the confidence to make that move, but I'm so glad it has worked out. And once you sort of settled in, then this is where I came and saw you in December. And when was it?
October.
Why did I say that? Completely wrong round. So I came over and saw you in October, and we got your caravan course done and your gas turbine engine. So how was that? Take us through that.
That was,
apart from awesome, because I did it, of course.
Absolutely. And you had to deal with me asking 5,000 questions, and you're like, I'm going to get to it. But it was fun. Caravan's fun to fly. It's a very light aircraft, much lighter than the 210. Doesn't feel any faster though. Nothing feels like anything's happening quicker. But to have
you're obviously not referring to the takeoff weight when you say lighter.
The controls feel lighter. It's you're not yanking it off the ground or anything. It's just just flies itself, very smooth. Really nice aircraft to fly. So I'm incredibly happy and thankful that my company gave me that opportunity to go on the van. Just completing my ICAS at the moment.
So take us through that. So what's the since we did the training, how did you feel sort of first day behind the controls without me.
Like, I'm not sure why you put the endorsement in my life. No, like, just, you know what you're doing. You've learnt it, obviously. Just because I've got the endorsement doesn't mean I can go launch into an aircraft and think I'm the best. So much more to learn. And I like doing it with our senior base. He's been fantastic. Leading me through it all. Even our chief pilot has been fantastic through the whole thing. Just if I have any questions, can just ask a question, and there's no dumb question either, which has been really good. Flying out to different strips, realizing how quickly the aircraft can slow down. It's just been really different.
And what about the difference? Probably the biggest one was that you and I didn't load up a bunch of people, did we? We pretended. But how is that managing the aircraft and hasn't tipped over on its tail yet?
No, not yet. I haven't managed to put it on its bum, but we're lucky we've got tail stands. It doesn't, I suppose, in a 210, when you are at max takeoff weight and you're on the back of the envelope, it's you do feel that, and you'll feel like you've got all the forward trim in the world and whatnot. Whereas I don't know, the Caravan just sort of sits, just kind of hangs out, and there's just not a lot to it. You do probably feel a bit heavier in the flare, but yeah, went and did my IPC, and the examiner was like, it's not a Caravan, it's Baron. Don't flare yet. So that was quite funny. Just using it, like getting used to different attitudes and whatnot.
Yeah, no, we definitely talked about that, didn't we? And what about the transition to glass? That was the first for you?
Yeah, it was a bit different. Your eyes go square after staring at the screen for a while, particularly when you are in smoke, and your horizon gets lost a little bit with the smoke that's around.
Which has been a hell of a lot lately,
especially in the
Creek fire and everything else.
So that's sort of probably something that's taken me a little bit to get used to, is to all your information's in one spot, and it's a lot easier, but your eyes take a lot of adjusting to get used to it. And autopilot's really nice.
No, fantastic. No, good on you. I'm really glad it's all worked out and you're enjoying it all. And like I said, straight into that ICAS, as a lot of people do this sort of rating, and then there could be a bit of a void or a gap between when they finish and when they get into it. So I'm glad you've been able to consolidate, and it was good fun talking to you on the radio the other day. Checking in on you.
Yeah, that was good.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's head back down the coast, back to Perth. And Hubert, buddy, how are you?
I'm good, mate.
He's sitting here anxiously hoping the baby doesn't wake up. So thank you for making the time, mate. It's long overdue.
It's all right. I've got her on my monitor here, and she's still out, so it's good.
All right. So, mate, look, again, mature age entry into the industry.
You're kind of.
So do you want to
I was expecting geriatric, but that's okay.
No, I wouldn't do that to you. So do you want to just take us through, your transition into aviation and roughly your pathway to, I guess we'll go up to where we first met, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, okay. So I started flying when I was a kid, but then mum and dad ran out of money, and I had my GFPT and got married, had kids and all that stuff, and then life took a turn, and I ran business my entire life, probably 3 or 4 different businesses, employed staff and so forth. And then, like I said, life took a turn, and I was sitting at home one day, and my wife said to me, "If you were lying on your deathbed, what would be your biggest regret?" I said, "To be a commercial pilot." And she goes, "Well, go and do it." So off I went.
Not your biggest regret not to do.
Not to do, that's right, sorry. I left the key word out of that one, I'm sorry. So she supported me, and I started training down in Melbourne, and then probably a quarter of the way through, transitioned across over to Perth, a little bit like Andrew. I had kids from my previous marriage that I unfortunately had to leave in Melbourne to get away from the noise, and then came across to Perth. Visited a few training organisations, and then I walked into where Trent was. He said hello. he abused me for a little while, and I said I found my home. And so
It was nice abuse.
and so
We call it banter now.
is that what it is? Okay, cool. Yeah, so I started training with Thunderbirds in Perth. Finished off my CPL, and then I moved into instructor rating, and I was fortunate enough to be able to do the instrument rating as well. So I kind of paralleled those two, which was an interesting journey in itself. I was trying to do my ATPLs at the same time. I don't know why, because on the onset of all of this, I never wanted to go to the airlines, knowing my age and so forth. I could have got in, but I just wasn't something that was on my ambition list, if you like.
Yeah, so you really did hammer it through. I mean, I remember how, I guess that was one of the good things, wasn't it? That, you said you wanted to have it done in this timeline, and I'm pretty sure we
did it
we delivered.
We did everything from start to finish, literally from where I was building my house towards my CPL to instructor rating, CPL, instrument rating, multi-engine class rating. The whole thing took me 13 months, I think, from start to finish.
Yeah, it was busy time.
It was a busy time. And then I started teaching on a casual basis, and then it was about 9 months of teaching when I started to sort of think, I know I don't want to go to the airlines, and I think I'm pretty confident in the fact that I want to teach. And I remember you saying to me, listen, you need to go and consolidate. So packed up my bags.
Well, no, what I said was that Amanda and I are looking to go to Darwin, and then next minute your buddy there before me.
Looking at your house, which you hated, and now you bought, loved. So.
And what time of the year was it when you went to Darwin? And then what was the conversation we had after that?
I don't remember. I've made that into one of those traumatic.
It was the wet season.
Yes, I know. Yes.
And then you're wondering why you couldn't get a job.
I spent 3 months up there looking for work. Got quite depressed because nobody was employing, and then I got a lucky/unlucky break. Got a job doing whatever it was that I was doing, and then moved to Catherine, and my wife stayed in Darwin. She got a job up there. She had already had a life up in Darwin before, so it was nothing new to her. But she was supportive and just threw her job down in Perth and moved to Darwin with me so that I could chase my dream. And then spent a bit of time in Catherine, driving to and from Catherine on the weekends and so on, and then moved back to Darwin, got a gig in Darwin. And then I realised probably towards the end of my time in Darwin that why I was actually there was to put some context to the content of being an instructor, because what I was teaching was what I was taught to teach rather than adding any experience. I mean, I brought a lot of life experience to it because I was at that time I was 44. So I started again at 43. I'm now about to turn 51. And yep, I had another child, would you believe? But, and I love it, and it's just the best thing that happened. But I needed that content to the context, or whichever way it is. So then I packed my bags and went back to Perth, found a gig teaching. The students who I already gained during that 9-month period when I left, they were pretty upset. Anyway, when I came back, they of course all came back to me, which was great. And then COVID happened, and we lost our job. Kelvin, myself, and Lloyd, we lost our jobs when we were working, and I was hunting work. And then one day, Ilka said to me, my wife, she said, "Babe, if there's some really good truck driving jobs going," and so I upped my ante a little bit, and then I landed the job where I'm at now. Because there was no restriction on actual teaching in Perth, all the students just came across with where I am currently now, and I'm working at Gas or Goldfields. So I landed that gig, kind of helped start that operation at Jandakot, because obviously Gas is based in Cal, and just kind of progressed through my teaching. And then I started to realise, again, I was approaching the age of 50 with the experience of COVID. And I'm going, oh, you know what? I saw a whole bunch of guys that went to the airlines and that's all they knew how to do. and that's fine. But when COVID happened, these poor guys, some had to change careers for the better for some of them, but others kind of, got into depression and they didn't know what to do for those 2 or 3 years, whatever it was. So I started to think about that, and I went, I need to future-proof myself because COVID may happen again. And so, my decision back then in my early 40s, or when I was 42, not to go to the airlines might have been kind of the universe, if you like, saying, yeah, no, don't go there because you're not a spring chicken anymore. So I've worked through gas now since 2020, so I'm going on to 4 years. I've got my grade 1. I've got all my teaching approvals. I'm flying the King Air. I've just become the deputy WHO, and I've literally just finished my mentoring for my examiner rating, and I've got my flight test in a couple of weeks for my examiner rating. So I'm really, really enjoying GA because every day is so different. Having the right attitude, having the right mindset, and being hungry for what you love to do. And yes, that's my saying. Thanks, Trent.
I've never tried to own it.
Oh, I don't know. I think I've been, I love the experience of GA. I love the everyday being different. I love flying the King Air. I love teaching. And every instructor, I also teach instructors. And one of the lines I always say to all the new recruits that come through, and I say, look, if you want to be instructor, that's great. But I want you to be better than me. I'm not saying I'm good. I'm just saying that I want you to be better because that's how we grow. And, hearing all the accidents, well, not all of them, but hearing the accidents happen and people losing their lives, it just sort of motivates me a little bit more to learn more, research more, become a better teacher, so that no one that sits in front of me, who I, guide or teach, ever ends up that way, because I want to deliver the best I can. So my motivation is completely different. My motivation is to future-proof myself, make better pilots, teach as much as I can from a life lesson standpoint. And if I can do it, and like I said, I'm nearly 51, started at 42, again, fresh from scratch, it's possible. I've had some really great mentors along the way, yourself, guys at GAS, Jeff and Dougal and all that sort of stuff. Everyone's helped me tremendously, and I'm very grateful for that mentoring. But you have to be hungry. You have to want it, and
Yeah, nothing's going to fall in your lap.
Nothing's going to fall in your lap. Absolutely never does. And you have to have your eyes open to the potential doors opening. One door closed, another one opens. And I always say, every time that happens, I say to my wife, I go, I wish when the universe opens that other door for you, there's just a little bit of something that you can see through that door, so you can kind of hold on to that that better thing coming. But it never happens, of course. Yeah. So, you have to be driven, motivated, and really hungry to achieve it. But it is doable. It is absolutely doable.
No, fantastic. Well, we'll come back to talk about a couple of those other bits in a minute. But let's move over to Jared now. So Jared, mate, keeping busy down there at the moment. We're do you want to just take us through again, just because you're new to the group, your sort of history, what got you into aviation, and then I'm keen to talk about getting an examiner rating and some of the challenges you found with that.
Yeah, sure. So my adventure, I guess, began as early as I can remember. I was maybe 2, somewhere around there. And I used to live up in Geraldton. Dad was a director of the TAFE at the time up there. So we'd moved up as a family with mum, dad, and myself. And I used to see the jets fly over. And I said, that's what I want to do when I'm older. I still have family friends to this day that when we catch up, they give me a bit of grief and they go, vapor trail, because as a 2-year-old, that's what I used to say. So fast forward, high school, uni, my CPL took me a while. So, like we know, it's flying and the cost and everything. So I think it took me about 7 years to get my CPL, going through, saving up, working, etc. And then landed my first job. I was pretty lucky down at Bunbury Aero Club. So packed up my bags, moved down there. I was down there for nearly 3 years. Came back to Jandakot. And the funny thing is, like what Hubert mentioned as well. I remember talking to the CEO when I got hired down there, and he's like, "What's your plans?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I want to be out of here within probably about 5 years onto the airlines." But I've just really enjoyed teaching, not only students but guiding instructors as well. And it's really, it's heartwarming to see people succeed in what they want to do, and knowing that you're having a part of that. So fast forward, now I'm the head of operations of the Royal Aero Club of WA. Yeah, and as we've just chatted, I got my CASA examiner rating as well. I've actually just recently got my head of operations approval for RAOs as well. So we're trying to launch into that. So looking at a couple of different avenues as well at the moment.
Yeah, okay. All right, there's a couple of things there. So let's talk about the RAOs quickly. So is that this has been something on the cards at the Aero Club for a long time, and when I was running the show as well. So is that to rebrand the sling or looking at something else?
No, so we're actually working with the guy at Electro Aero. So bringing in the electric pipistrels initially to start doing some of that, and then we'll obviously have to expand from there, just due to the endurance of the pipistrel, to be able to cover a lot of the things in its electric form. But they also have Rotax forms of it. Plus, yeah, we'll keep the sling GA for now.
Yeah, okay. So with those electric aircraft, so the thing I am interested in is the flight time and then the time to charge before you can go again. So how are you sort of combating that?
So at this stage, there's going to be, so we've got our open day this weekend, but the plan is basically to have two there. One's on charge, one's running with the fast charger. I think they're just over an hour charge time to bring them back for, if we look at with safe endurance, probably about, you can get sorties up towards the 50-minute mark. But if we look at 20, 30-minute flights for people, just as a bit of an intro, it comes in from there. It's just to do with that fast charge technology. There's the larger chargers, run 3-phase and all the rest of it, that gets them sorted a bit quicker. But I think as well, it's about being clever with what you do. So as I've started to talk to the guys, you look at your basic lessons, you look at effects controls, you look at climbing and descending, and you look at straight and level. You can't do those as 3 lessons in that. So what you would effectively do is you'd brief the 3, and then due to the endurance, you might do it over 2-3 lessons, but you just go through all those concepts before you move on. So we're just going to have to look at it a little bit differently for now with that concept, until such time that, battery has a greater lifespan or a greater flight time.
Yeah, it's a bit of outside the box, but it's definitely pioneering technology, and I guess someone's got to do it first and work out how to do it. And like you say, it's just changing the approach to things, a bit more thorough time on the ground, so there's less time in the air explaining things. And what about, is it going to be mainly out of Murrayfield, so you're not going to have all the delays? I know the weird thing is you look behind you and there's an aeroplane sitting there with the propeller stopped, but it's like the cars at the lights now, isn't it? They all stop and then they kick off again.
Yeah. Do you know the serious concept is when you call ready to the tower and they delay getting back to you, everything's just dead quiet, and straight away you start looking around and trying to touch things. You're like, what have I done? What's gone wrong? I can't hear a single thing. Yeah. So yeah, Murrayfield is our primary base for that. So we've registered that. I've got approval for the open day for trial flights to conduct out of there. We'll probably, the way RAOs works is you have to register other bases. So we'll probably register Jandakot as a secondary base, but primarily for TIFs, for that sort of thing, just to wet people's whistles. And then, look at conducting operations out of Murrayfield, because as you know, with country aerodromes, that's the great thing. A lot of the time is the moment you're airborne, the lesson's started, because you're in the training area for the area.
Yeah. No, I think it would be a bit difficult to do out of Jandakot, I think.
Yeah, we looked at it logistically, and you would have to basically have PNRs for conducting lessons. For that reason, so that you could make it back with your minimum charge.
Yeah, and I guess that's a discussion with the tower and air services, so they understand that there are legitimate bingo fuel almost.
Yeah, that's it.
Mayday fuel, Mayday battery. Yeah. All right. So with the I know your examiner rating stuff is something that you looked at for quite a while, and people have had a lot of challenges. I did a presentation with AOPA on one of their Tuesday night seminars, just talking all about the challenges people have been facing. So do you want to talk about your experience and just some of the problems you've had trying to get the ratings and how things changed and where you're at the moment and future aspirations?
The initial one that you first get is obviously quite a long process in terms of that you've got to meet your minimums, etc. And usually I say to people that are looking down that path, I say, well, if you submit that paperwork today, you're probably going to look at about 12 months for how long it's going to take until the process finishes. Throughout the time, the process of it has chopped and changed a bit. I remember talking to you at the time when I got my I went to go for my instrument rating, and they wouldn't let me do instrument and multi at the same time. So I had to do multi. I had to get that process completely finished before I could then submit paperwork to start instrument. Yet someone who applied a few months later got to do both concurrently. So that was a bit frustrating in that regard. And even at the moment, I've got my CPL, the elusive one for you there. And then mine, I got a please explain from Cass the other day because I've hit my 6 months because I've just been so busy with compliance for work as well as my own flying that, I need to get an extension for that at this stage for that. But at the moment, as it stands, I've got RPL, PPL, night VFR, multi, and instrument rating. And then, of course, now we've got those grade 1 qualifications that have popped in as well for the other bits and pieces. But, they were covered by my examiner anyway.
Yeah. And if my memory serves, you got caught up where initially the RPL, PPL essentially are the same, but there was night rating is included in that. But then I think you got bumped out of that and you had to do that separately as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So by the time I went to do it, they'd separated everything. So it was RPL, PPL initial, and then everything was a separate add-on. So I had to do night VFR as a separate one on its own too.
Yeah. So you're obviously fairly fortunate that you're at a sizable flight school and you've got reasonable access to several mentors and several students with a reasonable time frame. But like you say, even with that, it still takes time, doesn't it? Just trying to get everyone aligned and available at the same time and weight and balance issues sometimes. It's not easy.
Yeah, it can be quite hard to roll those up. Like I've got a couple of mentees at the moment. I've got one instructor from Gas, and I've got another one who is Shine, who are both mentees at the moment. I'm listed down for them, and it's the same thing. And when you try and organise someone from another organisation, it makes it even tougher. So yeah, that's why I say to people usually that first one, you're probably looking at about 12 months, especially when it might be something that's a little bit rarer. Like the night VFR is at least that one doesn't require any back seating. Well, at least it didn't when I did it. Whereas I'm staring down the barrel of the CPL one now, and it's exactly that. It's making sure you've got the candidates. Is it the time of year where people are flowing through? But then also how does it all fit weight and balance wise? And then of course I'm running the instrument department at the moment, so I'm really busy with that as is, trying to keep that running as well.
Yeah, no, it is. It's literally that process of just trying to get. I know one of the bloke Peter owns the Darwin Flight Training. When I was working there, he had 5 tests all lined up in a week and all got wiped out just with weather.
Yeah,
and then just took months and months and months. And then when you get it done, trying to get a CASA FOI to come and do the test, there's one or two of them that's available. And I know you guys use Slav, and he's just running around like a chook with his head cut off as well, trying to get through to everyone, and it could be months there. So
yeah, I've honestly only ever seen one other guy besides Slav, and the other guy came for, I think it was a specialized endorsement, like low level. Apart from that, everything else Slav has come to do, like his frequent flyer miles must be through the roof. He's Perth one week, Brisbane the next, then he's Adelaide, and then all of a sudden he's back at Perth again. And yeah, he must do more hours than anybody else just in flying in the back of a Caro burner.
Yeah, that's fantastic, mate. Well, I'm glad it's all going well. And how did you find the actual process of conducting flight tests once you started?
Yeah, I must admit I had good mentors for that as well. And CASA is very thorough with that process. There's the online modules, as you know, plus we've got to redo them every couple of years. And the standardization stuff is good too. I find as you get towards the pointy end with a lot of things, it's not too much of they're trying to catch you out, but a guided, educated experience as well that they do as well. So I've actually found, and again, like I could shout out to Slav, he's been very supportive, even when I've had odd questions about rules and regs and, hey mate, the wording on this says one thing, but the wording on this says another. I've sent him text messages before, I've sent him emails, and he's always good and responds, or the flight testing department responds, and quite often or not, it's good feedback, and they're like, "Thank you, we'll make the changes, etc." And or they'll give you a little bit of insight for that too. So I think it is well supported by CASA, because they do understand the need for examiners, because we have this, I guess, this generation of examiners now that's starting to get towards the end of their career, and a lot of things are getting hard to examine for that they haven't got people to replace it for.
Yeah, that's right. Well, JD just retired, or semi-retired, 80% retired.
Yep.
And I know we lost Maurice Tillack, passed away a few months ago. And yeah, look, it is, and it's a difficult process to get through, and it takes time, and especially now, like the likes of you and I, Hubert, we sort of in this chosen field, but others are moving on and taking those skills with them. So it is making it difficult, especially now with the volume of students coming through is ever increasing.
Even the airline absorption as well. Like you think about guys like, for people around Jandakot, they'll know Ash Horton and David Roses, who were both operators at, the bases for Ash was at Singapore, and then David was at Flight Standards. Now those guys are in the airlines. I don't know what those individual airlines' policies are for them with hours outside of what they're supposed to be doing. But all of a sudden, if the airlines turn around and go, "We own your hours, you can't do any duty or any flying outside of here," well, that's it. There's another examiner off the books.
Yeah, it's pretty much the case, and usually they are maxed out duty or flight time, so there isn't a lot of room, and I think they're just a bit over it.
Yeah.
The last thing they want to do is go flying. Yeah. No, brilliant. All right, mate. Carrie, you have been sitting there so patient. Thank you.
That's my usual way, patient.
Look, mate, it's so awesome to have you. Like I said, we've spoken to Byron before, and he keeps asking to talk again, but I said I can't until I talk to you and have you on. So I'm really, really pleased to have you. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. All right. Well, again, look, again, we go way back, a long story of how you got into aviation, and a lot of family history there, not a little bit different to mine, but it's almost similar as well. But do you want to just take us through your background again and how you started, and we'll work our way through?
Yeah, okay. I'll try and keep it short. Actually, it's funny. When you asked me to do this, I grabbed my logbook out just now before getting on to do this, just to have a little bit of a look at what my first role was as a commercial pilot, the first thing that I did, which was a trial flight. But just prior to that is your name, and it was our standardisation. So I remember walking, the bell that hangs in the Aero Club there, that we ring when you get first solos and licenses and things. I distinctly remember ringing that bell when I got my commercial licence, and then as soon as the clapping stopped, I walked over to your office and went, "Right, when do I start?"
And you were sort of entitled to ask that question because you saw that bell ring many times, didn't you?
Yeah.
Because you worked behind the desk to try and fund this crazy adventure.
Yeah. So I came to flying a little bit later, early 20s, I guess. I'd wanted to do it for a long time. Same story as Andrew and probably most other people on the screen. Couldn't afford it initially, so started in the early 20s, and I started at the Aero Club and with you there in Jandakot, and I was working in operations there at the time. That was how I was funding it. So it took me about 4 years, I think, to work my way through the commercial license, and that was saving flights every 2 or 3 weeks when I could afford to. And I got the commercial license and moved into instructing. That was actually what I'd initially that was a goal I'd initially set. I knew I wanted to fly. I didn't have any, grand goals in terms of airlines or anything like that. I just wanted to teach. I'd taught in my previous career, and I really enjoyed that. So it was probably a little bit of bullying on my behalf, but there was no way I wasn't finishing my it was my instructor rating. Sorry, bell ringing, not the commercial license. I got my commercial license, ran straight through that instructor rating with Glenda Dyke, and then there was no way I wasn't going to get myself on the roster as an instructor there. So I think I started out doing 1 or 2 days a week as a casual, and it's actually really interesting looking through my logbook and seeing a couple of names here. And it was like 12 years ago, 11, 12 years ago when I started it. And there's some people in here that I hear out on the airwaves now flying 320s and, running the training departments over in North Queensland of various charter companies, and it's a really inspiring thing to do. Hubert, you were speaking earlier about what a wonderful thing it is to be a part of somebody's achievements and to help and guide them. And this the first logbook that I've got sitting here in front of me is a testament to that. I really love that about teaching, and I like that about seeing people progress. I remember Ash Horton walking in the first time to the Aero Club to get information about learning to fly. And he's flying, an E-Jet with us now at the same company that I work with. And that's a cool progression to watch and be a part of. So, so I taught for 7 years. I'd like to say that we started the move to Darwin.
Yes, it was all general chat, and then suddenly everyone started going. I had to wait for Amanda's university to go to finish. So
well, friends of ours were shifting to Darwin, and so I went from the Aero Club, obviously, and then I came over and worked for you, or you worked for me, depends on how you want to look at it, I guess. And by the time I left you, I was grade 1 multi-engine IFA and flight instructor training, and doing a fair few hours at that rate. But then Byron got the job with Air North up in Darwin here, and so it's a good opportunity to mess up. And you know what? I never knew that the Darwin aviation industry existed until I got here, and what a shock it was when we got here. I had never expected to see a GA apron like it, and it's just massive. And I'm surprised that nobody at the Aero Club ever really talked about it. That we'd always talk about going to Broome to get your first job, but it's play school compared to Darwin. It's a huge industry here. So I went into teaching up here for a little while just because it was a easiest transition while Byron started something new, and then I decided that I was seeing all of my ATPLs lapse time after time. So I thought it was about time to take some time off and get them out of the way. And I think I knocked out the remainder in 4 months. But I ended up doing 19 ATPLs in 5 years, which I don't recommend to anybody. But I got those done, and then I was over at Hardy's doing charter, flying the Caravan predominantly, which was fantastic fun. I agree with everything Chloe says. It's a brilliant machine, and it's certainly a bum saver and something that makes you feel a lot more comfortable when dealing with the wet season weather up in territory here. It is so well equipped, it really, it takes a lot of the pressure off, I guess, having all that information there in front of you. And then Byron got a job down in Brisbane, and couldn't really say no to a 737, so off we went. And I've been really lucky, actually, since moving out of flying. I've had some really amazing jobs. Hardy's was fantastic. And then I fell into a job with Lifeflight doing medevac work, and within 3 months I had 2 corporate jet ratings, flying Lear 45s and Challengers, America, New Zealand, Asia, all around Queensland, and I was just living the dream. That's the best job I think I could ever have stumbled onto.
So how did you find that transition to international flying, and what were some of the challenges you found with that, and doing it in a jet that you weren't all that familiar with?
Well, it's interesting because I started on the Lear, and the Lear 45. My very first job was to Wellington at 2 o'clock in the morning, and with a gent who was probably closer to retirement than I would like to think. It was a steep learning curve. The company that I worked with, they weren't trainers, industry generally. If you don't have a solid training department, you really learn by doing and then by making mistakes. And you spend a lot of time running along, hanging onto the tail, hoping that you'll get there eventually. And that was what international ops was for me. I remember doing an 8-hour online course about international operations, and I was none the wiser by the end of it. And really, I just had to learn by doing. So the good thing about that is it's multi-crew ops. So there's somebody else there to pick up on what you've missed, demonstrate how to do it the right way. And, we flew somewhat infrequently. Obviously, we were running into COVID times then, but there was enough time in the cruise for us to get a few discussions in there and get my head around it. And look, there's a lot to learn. And the nature of the operations is very last minute. We had a 90-minute call-in time. So from phone call received at my house, 90 minutes later, we needed to have the wheels up. So there's not a lot of time in there for preparation, for reading the NOTAMs, looking at the weather, working out your flight plan route. In fact, all of that was done by the captain. I'd get there and push the jet out of the hangar, load it with fuel, do all the systems checks. He'd walk in, sit down beside me, we'd shut the door, and we'd brief, and that would be the first I'd hear about where we were going, how we were going to get there, and maybe what the weather was like en route when we got there. So, not a lot of opportunity to sort of sit and study and prepare yourself what was going to happen. So a lot of the learning's done on the fly with that, and I think that's probably the case with a lot of the smaller companies in that sort of industry, and charter companies that don't have a solid training process in place. So hopefully that's going to evolve and change. It really needs to, I think, in the Australian industry. But it was entertaining.
Yeah, well, that is it, isn't it? And that's always the case of people that know their job very well and the aircraft very well, but that ability to translate it into how the all of us in this group here, our different ways of thinking and perceiving and taking on information, which is all stuff we cover in the instructor training. It's important, isn't it? And it can really make that process. It's going to be stressful, but it can make it more pleasant and a little bit easier than not, isn't it?
Yeah, it really just depends on who you've got sitting in the other seat doing the training with you, or if they're training, in fact. We did no training flights at all. I did the ratings in the States, came home, and my first flight was a ferry flight. That lasted 45 minutes. And then the very next flight was an on the job. And what I didn't know, I learned from that. I found out what I didn't know.
All right, guys, so we're going to end part 1 there. Part 2 is available immediately online, episode 101, coming right up. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care.